Welcome back to the On the Path podcast with Dr. Charlie Kyle and Johnny G, recorded at the Music Cellar in Millerton, New York. Today we have a special and important episode where Charlie is going to implore us all to vote.
And to think about what the long-term future might be if we could just get past this Trumpian version of fascism. We got to get past that somehow and really get imaginative, celebratory, clear thinking about what life is all about, why we're here on this planet, and not get distracted by all the craziness that's bubbling up all around us. That's the topic.
All right. Easy stuff here.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard not to get distracted in an overstimulated world with ever-present conflict and drama and fire in the streets.
I don't know about you, Johnny, but I hold on to music and musicking and drumming and singing and dancing as absolute sine qua nons. Without this, nothing. Without some kind of continual access to joy, to love, to caring, to collaborating, to our species being, as I define it, humorous, playful collaborator. That's the animal we are. And we know how to collaborate, we know how to have fun, and we do have a sense of humor. Almost everybody I know is surviving these days on a fallback position of, who knew how crazy things could get? And there's humor in that if you can just step back long enough. And that humor is a way of thinking. That humor, that playfulness, that flow that comes with musicking, dancing, drumming, singing, and making fun of things. That's our saving grace, how we can survive as human beings in an increasingly, how can I put it, harsh and ugly world when you see these wars going on in Ukraine and in Gaza and now in Lebanon. It is just scary to me, frightening, that human beings cannot step back and take a moratorium, accept a ceasefire. Look, this is getting worse and worse. Ceasefire time. And this is where the lack of a peace department, the lack of people in an office somewhere with some files with plans for every occasion, that lack is now hitting me in the middle of the night. Where is the peace department in every freedom-loving democracy? Where are 5 people with cabinet files?
Peace don't pay.
Peace is not profitable, but it is. And I mean, this peace and prosperity is what Ron Paul pitched as his nonprofit organization when he got out of Congress. And unfortunately, those guys kind of went astray pretty quickly with the rise of Trump and so on. And so peace and prosperity are synonymous in my mind. That's how you maintain, sustain prosperity, is through peace, not through war. So war profiteers are a tiny minority of people benefit from destroying stuff.
They're benefiting a lot.
Right.
Lots of money.
Yep.
War is waste. I mean, think of the destruction and the unrealized potential and the ruined, all that hard work of construction and resources just completely obliterated.
Yep.
It should be illegal. It's
a
total waste of human life.
One time, back in the 1920s, the Kellogg Pact or whatever it was. I got to go back and look at the...
After the Great War, they made it illegal?
Yep.
I never knew that.
It didn't last long.
Yeah.
It didn't. The powers that be wanted to keep their power. And it's this power that corrupts absolutely. The more serious these weapons become and the more technologically advanced the worse the outcomes. There's nobody winning.
Aren't a lot of cases where there's the same companies are selling the same weapons to both sides?
Yep. That was what Catch-22 was about, that book. And, all the double binds and Catch-22s and circularity of profits that come out of the war machinery. And that's finally how it was justified to somebody like Eisenhower when he made his speech about how the military-industrial complex was taking over. And it became the military-industrial congressional complex. Now the Senate and the House are as complicit in all this war-making as anybody.
What makes you think that Kamala isn't just as tied up into that and profiting off that, or has lobbyists involved in that or whatever?
Well, I think the role of vice president gave her a wonderful opportunity to do helpful things, good things for the Biden administration, and not have to be right on the firing line of having to make difficult decisions. We have the illusion that the vice president is in constant contact with the president and part of the co-leadership. It's not like that at all. It's always about the president, the personality at the center of this hub of power, having to make the difficult decisions. And they're always made more difficult by not having any peace options on the table. Nobody's talking about a 3-state solution, Lebanon and Palestine and Israel being a triangle, and putting a border around those 3 states, or a 4-state solution, including Jordan, which has the hardest currency in the world. Why, I don't know. But
what do you
Jordan...
mean? What do you mean by hardest?
Their dinar is negotiable for any other currency in favor of the dinar. You got to come up with quite a few dollars to get a dinar.
Oh.
Or, in dollar terms, their currency is harder, more durable, more trustworthy than the dollar.
Less affected by inflation, or?
Yep, less infected by infected. Yeah, less infected by inflation, and more valuable. It buys more.
Interesting. So are you talking about a physical border around the 3 states?
Yeah, I'm talking about a
wall?
A border that encompasses, I would say, a 4-state solution at this point is more credible to the parties involved, because you've got to keep everybody within that border free of terrorism, free of fear. And you're going to try to get peace by having 4 existing entities, Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, and Jordan, have a great interest in making this work, because outside money, dollars, yuan, people who want to help that peace process along will only do it if these four entities can show that they can get along and not disrespect each other, attack each other, and that there's local autonomy, that the Druze, for example, a small minority, Arab minority in Lebanon mostly, that they get their own sense of autonomy, self-determination. You have 4 self-determining peoples whose possibility of self-determination rests on keeping that alliance going. That confederation can be a very loose confederation that just has a currency in common, a parliament that meets and adjudicates water issues, food issues. That's why I put food first on my little agenda here that I pass out at the peace demo on every
So
every
right
Saturday.
before we hear about food, which I want to hear, you're talking about a border, not a physical wall.
Right.
Okay, because I don't think we need more walls up.
Walls, good fences make good neighbors.
Hey, there's a campaign slogan: walls, not walls.
Right.
All right, let's hear about.
I'm still thinking about that one, Johnny.
Nice.
No, walls symbolize, containment, imprisonment. The two sides on either side of the wall are separating themselves. And, of course, the anarchist ideal, which are so far away at this point, of wall-less or borderless living, is not going to happen anytime soon. But we need to keep that goal in mind of not having walls as borders and having a world in which people are so happy in their own locality, so filled with joy, love, and humo ludens collaborans, humorous, playful collaboration, that they don't want to flee or become a refugee. They want to be where they are. And getting people to be happy where they are, that seems to be a huge problem in today's world. A lot of people don't have a feeling of self-determination or of being in some kind of control of their living. They feel like other people have got the levers of power in their hands. And that's extremely alienating, and that's why somebody as crazy as Trump and as untrustable, compulsive liar has this appeal, is that he can unite a bunch of people feeling like they belong to something different, something outside the usual parameters. We're part of some kind of a movement that is giving us a feeling of belonging, and that feeling of belonging is hard to crack once it's been established, and that's what we're up against. So my 6 suggestions to people who are thinking about voting and thinking hard about it is we put food first. Putting food first for me means trying to incentivize small family farms. We need something from the Harris campaign to suggest to all those people in the primarily agricultural states, which are all the ones that are most red or most MAGA, that there's a whole other way of thinking about agriculture that is bubbling up all over the country anyway. There's all this kind of talk about no-till and a revolution in farming that would get agribusiness out of the big, huge factory farming and monocultures and get us into what used to be Jefferson's idea of the ideal citizen, the yeoman farmer, the guy who is got a family farm and trying to be as much of a citizen as he can possibly be in the circumstances at hand. And that hasn't changed really since the 1770s. We still need to eat, and we need to eat healthy, and we've been eating less and less healthy. So incentivizing family farms, and there's hundreds of ways of doing that. We need the Harris campaign to really bear down on that issue between now and November 5th and have lots of people out there talking about it, what it would mean to have sustainable agriculture all across the USA, in every state of the Union. And of course, buying back land from China is a way to do that. If we gave China a really nice price for anything they've bought in Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Iowa, Nebraska, the heartland, and say, okay, that's land that China wanted for soybeans. We can still grow soybeans there, but we're going to have small farms growing different varieties of soybeans to keep diversity going. All these incentives to do the right thing for food would, I think, make a huge difference as to how the election turns out if they really focused on that.
Now, allow me to play devil's advocate. Would not Donald Trump agree with you there that we need to get that land back in the hands of America?
Yeah, that's why we take that issue away from him, or give him the idea. Let him run with that. Hey, we thought of that. We want to buy land back from the People's Republic of China. You're going to do that? Okay, but you won't do it at the right price. You'll try to cheat the Chinese. We have to pay them at least what they paid for it, if not more, at current real estate prices. And, you can have an argument about that, and that would be great. The same thing is holding, I think, for inflation and immigration, which I sense, are the two big issues that Trump and Vance are pushing. We've got to get, better control of immigration, and we've got to get better control of inflation. And
are you moving on from food?
Yep.
Well, I want to say school lunches, better nutrition for everyone.
Yep.
Even vegetables have less nutrients nowadays because they're grown in huge monocultures, where they're not being rotated and they're using up all the nutrients in the soil, and they're shipped here from California. Imagine if every lawn in suburbia or in small town America had a crop of cucumbers or tomatoes or whatever it is, and that was put into the school system and into the brains of these people. I mean, I'm not sure if he's correct, but my dad argues that a lot of these people are easily manipulated because of they don't have proper nutrition in their brains, and they're not eating whole foods.
I became aware of sociogenic brain damage to children when I was back in Buffalo in the 1980s, 70s, 80s, way back when. There began to be these studies showing sociogenic, that is, socially caused brain damage from malnutrition in places like Argentina, Chile, Latin America, Asia, all over the world. There are pockets of malnutrition where there should be family farms producing really good food.
Wow.
In the traditional ways that have been serving us well for centuries, for millennia.
I mean, it's scary what we feed kids in public schools. It's corporate, packaged food, processed foods, owned by Nestle or whatever it is, and sugar and corn syrup. And imagine what could happen if people ate out of their backyards.
Yeah. At least I try to eat something every day from around my surroundings. Like yesterday, I went and picked some nettles that were grown along the side of the road. I had to wash them pretty well because they gotten dusty. But these were somebody mowed along the side of the dirt road, and then these new nettles came up, and so I just snipped off the tops of every nettle plant and made myself a batch of greens.
Nice.
Wasn't very tasty, but with enough lemon and virgin olive oil and salt and pepper, it was an edible green. Not my favorite spinach, but good and good for me.
Very good. It's a super green, I think. It's loaded with nutrients. Yeah, I picked a bunch of chard and tatsoi and kale yesterday morning and threw it in my eggs, and every little bit helps. And it's not happening in this country as much as it should. So I totally agree with you. Food first, gardens first. Gardens are a form of, I don't want to say resistance or protest as much as just they're a positive force.
Yep. And could be very satisfying for everybody involved. And it just takes a little bit of subsidizing of whatever's hard to find locally. And the market, this is where the invisible hand of the market could play a wonderful role in helping people diversify their food sources. I've got a lot of quince this year from one tree that has over a couple of hundred quinces in it, and they're big, round, lots of fiber, lots of vitamin C. A little bit of boiling, a little simmering, add a little honey, a little cinnamon, and boy, are they tasty.
It's a different kind of fulfillment eating when I boil up some green beans from our green bean crops, and it's delicious, and you know that it came kind of by the fruits of your labor and out of your backyard, and it I think there is a dopamine release to that. I think we've evolved to feel good when we stumble upon a crop of cherry tomatoes or so not only nutritional health but mental health is going to improve if people are eating out of the garden.
Well, the sociogenic brain damage thing hit me like a ton of bricks back then, and it's just gotten worse. That was 40 or 50 years ago that I became aware that children were having their brains limited. And so I put food first on the list. And let me just look.
I love that. That if any presidential candidate listed that, they'd probably get my vote. I think that's very underrated and not talked about enough. So thank you.
So we need to get the message, folks. If you're listening to this, we should get this on the radio if we can.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a first opening podcast that's radio worthy. And then the other issues here are inflation and immigration. And the same principle that you identified, Johnny, of, well, wouldn't Trump like that? Yes, these are Trump's issues right now, inflation and immigration. And we need to take those issues away from him with outstanding ecological proposals. Inflation, we should try to limit it not to 2%, which is the Federal Reserve standard, but to 1.5 or 1, or keep trying to get it very close to zero so that our money is worth as much as anybody else's money in the world. Hard currency is a great goal because all this inflation fools people into thinking that they've got savings when they haven't. Those savings are going to shrink if we keep having inflation. So I think this is one place where old-fashioned conservatism, adopted by the Democratic Party, and saying we're going to urge the Fed to keep inflation at near zero or at 1.5% instead of 2%, incrementally try to stop inflation from happening. And everybody says, oh, that's going to mess up. We won't have growth. We won't be borrowing on the future to a better. Wait a minute. Borrowing on the future, did you say? You know what I mean? We need to be sustainable now and in every dimension. And the same for immigration. Every American has a bigger carbon footprint than every European. Europe is twice as light in its carbon footprint per capita as we are. And Asia is even lighter in per capita carbon footprint. So we lead the world in consumption, waste, carbon footprint issues. And wouldn't it be great if we just said no immigration anymore, a moratorium on immigration? Nobody comes here for the American dream because the American dream is a carbon nightmare. And so we got to say we can't solve Mexico's population problem. We can't solve El Salvador's or Guatemala. We got to say people at the southern border, sorry, no more immigration. And the same thing for Nordic immigrants with science degrees. We got to produce those people here at home. If our education system is failing, we better know it and make sure that we have the engineers we need, the STEM experts, the technical prodigies. You know, we need all those people who can invent and maintain our technological superiority, and we don't need to import them from abroad. That's brain drain out of all those other countries. So no immigration, either for crop picking folks or brain drain people. We got to say, no, we're going to solve our problems here at home. This is Trump's big play, in a way, is let's make everything here in America, America first, MAGA, MAGA. Take that away from them and just say no immigration, refugees only, and well vetted for all those countries where we've invaded or propped up a dictator or where we've made our mistakes. We have to be reckoned with that and take refugees in. And the other points we'll get to maybe in another podcast are peace, justice, and love, which I heard from my favorite candidate, Marianne Williamson. And I feel like we could do so much better with a peace department, with a global organization of democracies, for people from that peace department to go to and discuss how to create peace around the world. Nobody has this full-time job in the USA of thinking peace and putting a plan on the table whenever a conflict rises up somewhere or it looks like a genocide is in the making. We ought to have peace plans in file cabinets from all the different universities in the USA and Canada. North American peace plans, where are they? Nobody talks about them. Nobody's talking 3-state solution or 4-state solution.
I've never heard a candidate mention love. That's a beautiful thing.
Well, it's the topic of all the religions of civilization, East and West, are talking about doing unto others as you would have done to you. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is the golden rule, and it's echoed or resonating in different languages all the way across, all the way around the planet, wherever there's urbanism and civilization. People are talking about, we have to treat each other with dignity and trust and respect. And this is as basic as it gets. It's the Article 1 of global, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I ought to read that declaration. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act toward one another in a spirit of sisterhood, brotherhood. I've added the sisterhood there, but that's Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I have not heard this talked about on any radio program, or can't find it hardly on the computer. But what a wonderful statement that is, and how completely ignored it is. If we just focused, every voter focused on the importance of loving thy neighbor as thyself, trusting your neighbor, doing for that neighbor what you would like done for you. You talked about it when you said, let's share the green beans, or, taking anything you have a surplus of, you trade it with somebody else. That could be a growing movement until everybody's feeding each other.
Back to bartering.
Yep. Bartering and just neighborliness. It's not even bartering. You just give people some excess fruit or excess cucumbers, and somebody will be giving you their excess when they've got, I escaped that mildew.
We fill in each other's gaps.
Right, exactly.
It takes a village.
Yep, takes a village. So I could pick up on any one of these, but it seems to me like between now and November 5th, I hope the Harris-Walt campaign comes up with forums, and I'd love to see the two of them either separately or together listening to scientists on all these topics, on climate change, on sustainable agriculture, on food first issues. How do we get the Fed not just audited, which was a good slogan from Ron Paul, audit the Fed, not just audited, but really thought about as to how is it that we're letting this more private enterprise than public enterprise guide our entire economy. It's worked, you could say, I suppose, so far, but we don't have it under control. We don't have it in our minds exactly how the Fed works. And I think auditing the Fed and then gradually eliminating it and encouraging more diversity of banking rather than a monolith setting the interest rates. I don't know. I think that would be appealing to a lot of so-called conservative people. It's never been tried. A lot of us don't even know how the Fed works. I don't. So audit it and get hard currency as a goal and lowering the debt. All those things that people say, well, we can always pay it off. We're borrowing from ourselves, blah, blah, blah. No, we're not. This is a kind of a game that's being played that we can't play anymore if we want to preserve the planet in peace and prosperity. I feel good. I've had my say, Johnny. You have any questions about all that?
No, that's great. Let's pick it up next time. Thanks for listening, everyone.